Hello and welcome to another Fourth Branch interview. I am Russell Dolag today. I'm here with Marshallese poet Kathy Jetnil-Kijiner. Thank you for joining us today, Kathy.
Thanks for having me.
It's always a pleasure. We've worked together a lot of times, but just for some of the people at home watching, if you could just give yourself a little intro.
Okay. My name is Kathy. I was born in the Marshall Islands and raised in Hawaii. And I write poetry. I do spoken word. I have done videos with Fourth Branch. What else is there? I just completed my master's in Pacific Island Studies, and I'm about to go back to the Marshall Islands in a month. Next month. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. So just to dive in right now, first question, you gave us a little bit about your background, but I want to know a little bit more about your education and personal background in life, and how that's led you to where you are today.
Okay. Regarding what?
Well, let's say you grew up here. Where did you go to school?
I went to school at UH Lab, and that's actually where I was first introduced to slam poetry, because these guys from Youth Speaks Hawaii came and they substituted for my class. And so they came and they did a workshop with us, and that's when I first wrote my first slam poem. And so I kind of started attending their workshops, and then I got on the team, and we went to New York, and that's when spoken word became part of my life.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then after school there, what happened?
I went to Mills College in Oakland, California, and over there I did some spoken word too, but I continued more with poetry. So over there I got into a program called Poetry for the People, and that is like a poetry program that's geared more towards, writing about oppression and writing about your own oppression and writing about your culture and, where you're from, and just having an awareness within your poetry that a lot of, certain types of poets might not be aware of. Yeah. After Mills, I graduated in 2006, went back to the Marshall Islands, and started work at the College of the Marshall Islands. I was working as a communications officer for 2 years. So I was doing like newsletters, PR, stuff for the college. I finished the 2 years out there, and then I came out here to UH to attend the Pacific Island Studies program, to enroll in that program. And that's what I just finished just now, this past May.
So you just successfully defended your thesis. Could you touch upon that a little bit?
Okay. Yeah, there's a lot I could say about that, but I won't.
As much as you want.
Well, the thesis that I did was basically it's like a study of Marshallese literature, but it expands how you look at Marshallese literature so that you can include stick charts, tattoos, the oral tradition, so that it's not just the written text, but it's our own forms of expression. So really, it's kind of like a canon, if you will, of Marshallese expression. So so basically my portfolio looked at that history of expression, and then it also included my own poetry to contribute to that lineage of Marshallese expression.
Thanks for sharing that with us. All your work that you've done, and it's all that's led up to, like, who would you say were the major influences in your writing and your thesis and your poetry?
Well, I would say first and foremost my parents, definitely. My mom always encouraged me to do something to give back to my community. So, when I was younger, I wanted to be an actress, but she was like, what are you going to do? How is that going to give back to your community? I mean, now I can argue that, but at the time when I was a kid, I was like, oh, I can see where she's coming from. So, she gave me a sense of awareness of community and what you can give back, and, being aware of how you can contribute to others. And I've kind of tried to put that into my writing. I've tried to use writing as my vehicle to do that. And then my dad is also a huge influence, because he gave me one of the first important pieces of advice when I was younger, which was when I first started writing my first poem when I was in like 4th grade, and it was write what you know, don't write what you don't know. So he was kind of against fiction, but I think it's a really good piece of advice. That's basically what's carried me through all my writing.
Are there any writers, particularly Micronesian writers, that influence your work?
Definitely. Well, Emily Kiling from Pohnpei.
Okay.
Yeah, I love that book that she wrote, Mairos. That was really inspirational for me to see another Micronesian woman who was also publishing and writing her own poetry. And she has poems about like Kool-Aid and, betel nut, and I totally could relate to all of it. So I loved seeing that. And also Craig Santos Perez from Guam. He has also been really influential in guiding me and guiding my career and just, supporting my writing. So those two, definitely.
Cool. Well, let's start talking about some of your poems. We have three popular ones that we want to talk about. The first one was a history lesson.
Yes.
Where did that come from?
Well, it was written when I was in California doing my Poetry for the People program. So the whole point of our writing prompt was like, write about a history project that you did where it really influenced you or something like that. So I decided to write about that, about my history project with nuclear testing. The funny thing about that poem is it actually ends super short when I first wrote it. It ends at the part with the line about how the goats are on the ship, and then there's a line under the caption of the photo. It says, goats and pigs were left on naval ships as test subjects. Thousands of letters flew in from America protesting animal abuse. So there's a line in my poem about that, right? And when I first wrote the poem, it just ended there. Like that, I just wanted to end there so that I could get people to be like, whoa, that's so messed up. But the thing is, the people in my group were like, they encouraged me to express how I really felt about that line, about that caption. They pushed me to really basically express my, what would you call it? Just my rage. They told me to express my rage, and that's not really something that's really that comfortable, especially as I feel with Marshallese, we tend to not want to go to that place, in public. That's not something that's really easy to express. So.
Yeah, that poem seemed to impact a lot of people. Did you foresee that when after you started publishing it and speaking it more?
No, actually, I wrote that poem. Once I started, I wanted to turn it into a spoken word piece because I was really getting frustrated in California with how many people didn't know anything about nuclear testing out there. They didn't know anything about nuclear testing. They didn't know anything about the Marshall Islands. So, and that kind of, we know their history. How come they don't know our history? And that frustration led me to start performing it more. And so the reactions that I got from the audience was a lot of, wow, I didn't know that happened. So that's mainly, the kinds of reactions I got. And I think it was worth it to do that.
This is a really great poem. I just want to touch upon Tell Them, another one of your greats. Tell us a little bit about how that came about in your process writing that.
Tell Them came about when I returned to the Marshall Islands from college in the Bay, and I had just moved back home. And I think one of the things that really struck me about the Marshalls when you're living there, that you don't really figure out when you're living so far away, because I spent so many years away from it, is just how big the ocean is. I mean, you see how big the ocean is when you're on a plane and, when you're in Hawaii, sure, but it just doesn't seem as big as when you're in the Marshalls. When you're in the Marshalls, there's ocean on either side of you, and you just realize how vulnerable your island is. And that vulnerability really started to freak me out because, I started to learn about climate change. I started hearing about it in the news. And then I started talking to more people, other kids my age, to adults and to the people who are working in that kind of field. And what really struck me the most about all these articles and talking, people on the news who were talking about climate change was how much the human face of the people who are going to lose everything, it's just non-existent in those conversations. The conversation revolves around, will we get a visa, or where are we going to move to, or will they get a seat in the UN? There's no emotion there, yeah. So I figured, I should try to get that out there somehow. And it just all came in one sitting. That was one of the easiest poems I ever wrote.
Really?
Yeah.
How long did it take you?
I literally sat down and it all came out in one sitting. Yeah, and it was I have no idea what it was. But it was one line was changed. My cousin Tamara helped me change it. The last line the last line, the poem that you know now, it ends with, and we are nothing without our islands. But originally it said we are nothing without our home. And my cousin was like, you should change that. It shouldn't be home. I think of like brick walls when you say that. You should say islands.
Wow.
Yeah, that was it.
That's a little tidbit. All right, well, let's move on to another big one we collaborated on together also.
Yeah.
Lessons from Hawaii.
Yeah, that one was a tough one. That one was probably the toughest poem I ever wrote. Should I go into that?
If it's up to you, if you want to share that.
Yeah, so it was one of the toughest poems I ever wrote because I think, it came about, again, it started in the Bay. And I was out there in California, and one of my friends who I made out there, she lives out there. She said, hey, you're from Hawaii, right? And I said, yeah. And she said, didn't you tell me you're like Micronesian? And I was like, yeah, I'm Micronesian. And she was like, don't they hate Micronesians out there? And, at the time it kind of shocked me, and I didn't say anything, and then I was like, yeah. And I didn't know how to react, because then I had to think about it, and I realized that I had grown up with so much of this entrenched racism just underneath the surface my whole life that I had just come to accept that it was totally normal. Yeah. So basically I started writing it out there, and I had to just keep going back and editing it and editing it and editing it. And it was such a hard place to be, because unlearning racism, unlearning that kind of hatred that you've internalized for so long is so much work. I don't know if you've ever done it, or if you know people, but it took a lot to get to that point where I could finally figure out what it was that made me so angry. And it was, the fact that it made me hate myself, and that's how the poem ends. So yeah, that's when I wrote it, and then I shared it with you guys, and we did the video, and I was scared to put it out there, but I'm glad we did.
Yeah, I'm really glad we did too. A lot of people wrote in like, this is exactly how we feel and stuff. So one question we wanted to ask was, like, growing up, and you were facing that kind of discrimination, right? Mm-hmm. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? What it was like being Marshallese, growing up here in Hawaii?
I think for me, because I went to a school where I was the only Marshallese, I was the only Micronesian. So that I always kind of felt like other, but I didn't know how to articulate it at that age. I didn't know why I felt so different and so uncomfortable in my own skin all the time. Mm-hmm. And then also, while I was going to school, there, I had my cousin who was going to school at Roosevelt with more Micronesians, but also all these fights and, people literally spitting on her, being stuck in an ESL class for so long. And I was hearing about these, and then on top of that were these headlines in newspapers about, Micronesians fill homeless shelters, and Micronesians run hefty healthcare tab. And I was listening to the adults whispering in the dining room, talking about, why are they talking about us like this? Why do they treat us like this? And this was all kind of around me and surrounding me, and I had no words for it to process it. So that's kind of the experience that I had,
If you could say something to the young people out there watching right now, what would be some advice or some tips or just anything you'd want to share about that?
I don't know. I guess I would say that, our culture is really beautiful, our families are really beautiful, and despite what some people might say, they're just ignorant, and they don't know us, and they don't know our history, and that they shouldn't internalize it. I don't want anybody else to hate themselves the way I did when I grew up. I want them to appreciate their culture. I want them to go and talk to their grandmothers and, and be with their families and be proud of who they are and where they're from.
Your work, it's kind of rare. Where do you think, where do you want to see art, Micronesian art, in the future?
I want to see it everywhere. I just want to see it in every kind of different form. Like, you guys, Fourth Branch. That, some people might not say it's art per se, but it is. You're expressing yourselves and you're telling stories. I want more people to tell their stories in whatever medium that might be. You know, if it's painting, if it's movies, if it's, you know, if anything, I just want more voices, more Micronesian voices out there. I don't want to be the only one just speaking out there. You know, I'm kind of sick of hearing myself talk. So, yeah.
Well, we're not tired of you yet. All right. Well, thanks for sharing all of that with us. You've told us where you've been with your work. Where to from now? Where to?
Well, I'm in like a few days or a few weeks. I'm moving back to the Marshall Islands, and I'm going to be teaching at the colleges of Marshall Islands, a few courses. Beyond that, I'm also working on a manuscript, and I'm hoping to get it published. I'm looking for a publisher right now. I'm working with Craig Santos Perez, actually from Guahan, and he's helping me find a publisher and just editing it up. I just want to keep writing. I want to write more books.
All right, you heard it here first, exclusive. She's writing a book, guys. All right. And then after that, any other aspirations? You gonna get a PhD?
Possibly. I do want to, actually. Like a little bit further down the line, I kind of want to just keep writing for a while. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's all the questions we have for now. Is there anything else that you wanted to add to all the viewers out there?
That's about it.
All
Thanks
right.
for having me. Yeah, this is great.
Well, thank you very much for coming. We appreciate it here at the Fourth Branch. Viewers, please remember to subscribe and like. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and keep sending us your questions. We want to hear from you guys. Once again, this is Russell with the Fourth Branch here with Kathy Jetnil-Kijiner. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
And keep watching.